At 28 years old, Michael had everything people told him he needed to be successful. A car with a payment he never mentioned out loud, a downtown apartment he could barely furnish, clothes bought to be photographed, not worn. But every single month, alone, in the dark, he was terrified to check his bank account. Then one Tuesday night, after a dinner he couldn't afford with people who wouldn't remember it by Friday, he made a decision that would quietly rewire the rest of his life. He stopped trying to look rich. Michael Torres, 28, software account manager, Austin, Texas. Salary, $85,000 a year, a number that on paper sounds like freedom. In practice, it felt like nothing. Rent on a one-bedroom near the Domain, $1,850 a month. Car payment on a BMW 3 Series he leased the week he got promoted, $612 a month. Credit card balance, quietly rolling over every cycle, $4,200 and climbing. He wasn't lazy, he wasn't reckless, he was doing exactly what he'd been taught success looked like. The problem wasn't his income, the problem was who he was competing against, a group of people he mostly didn't like, in a competition none of them had actually agreed to enter. Here's something almost nobody says out loud. Looking wealthy and being wealthy are two entirely different financial systems. One drains your bank account, the other fills it. And modern life is engineered very deliberately to keep you confused about which one you're playing. It starts small. A coffee that costs $6 because the size names sound European. A phone upgraded every 2 years, not because the old one broke, but because the new one has a better camera nobody will ever see the photos from. Then it gets bigger. The car lease, $612 a month for 4 years, which is over $29,000 to drive a vehicle he will never own. The apartment upgrade, chosen not because he needed the extra bedroom, but because his coworker mentioned which building she lived in. The Cabo trip he couldn't skip because everyone from the office would be there, posting. Psychologists call this the hedonic treadmill, the idea that we adapt to new levels of luxury almost instantly, so the upgrade never actually satisfies us, it just resets the finish line further away. Social media didn't invent this instinct. Humans have always compared themselves to their tribe, but social media gave the tribe an infinite feed, updated every few seconds, filled with people showing you their best day, edited to look like their everyday. By the time Michael turned 28, he had a 6-figure lifestyle sitting on top of a 5-figure income and a bank account that told the truth his car never could. The turning point didn't arrive as a lightning bolt. It arrived as a small, humiliating moment that most people would forget by morning. He'd missed rent by 4 days. Not because he didn't have a job, because the car payment, the credit card minimum, and the bar tab from Saturday had already spent it for him. And staring at his phone that night, at hundreds of strangers celebrating someone he barely spoke to anymore, something shifted. He realized, almost physically, a sentence that would not leave him. The people he was trying to impress weren't even paying attention. Nobody was tracking his car. Nobody was auditing his watch. The coworkers he compared himself to were, at that exact moment, comparing themselves to someone else entirely. Everyone was performing for an audience that was busy performing for a different audience. It's a strange kind of loneliness, an entire economy of status built on an audience that was never really watching. 3 weeks later, Michael listed the BMW. He took a loss on the lease buyout, $2,100, gone, just to exit. It stung, but it stopped the bleeding. He moved to a smaller one-bedroom 15 minutes further from downtown. Rent dropped from $1,850 to $1,150. He bought a used Honda Accord in cash, $11,000. No payment, no interest, no performance. The difference, just over $1,100 a month, didn't disappear. It went into an index fund on autopilot the same week he got paid, before he could ever see it, before he could ever spend it on something that photographed well. He wasn't chasing minimalism as an aesthetic. He was chasing something much older and less Instagrammable: margin. room to breathe, the ability to say no to a job, a person, or a demand without panicking about the consequences. Before, Michael's life ran on a kind of low-grade dread. Debt he didn't talk about, a job he couldn't afford to leave even when it made him miserable because leaving meant admitting the lifestyle wasn't real. Approval he needed constantly, refreshed like a notification. After, something quieter took over. Not excitement, peace. His investment account, small at first, began to compound, not dramatically, not overnight, but with the kind of dull, reliable progress that never trends on social media. 18 months in, he had $23,000 saved and invested, more than he'd ever had in his adult life, sitting behind a car nobody complimented and an apartment nobody envied. There's a phrase worth sitting with. The richest person is often the person who needs the least to prove. Not the person with the most stuff, the person who could walk away from a bad job, a bad relationship, or a bad deal because their life wasn't financially wired to a performance they had to keep up. Freedom, it turns out, rarely looks like the version we're sold. It doesn't look like a car commercial. It looks like a Tuesday evening where nothing is due, nobody is owed, and no one is watching. And that's exactly the point. Not everyone around Michael understood the change. Some read it as failure, a downgrade, a step backward for a guy who used to have it together. One friend asked him straight out why he sold the car. Michael told him nothing happened, he just stopped paying for a car he didn't actually want. The table went quiet, and the conversation moved on. A few friendships thinned out, not through conflict, just distance. Some of those relationships, it turned out, had been built entirely on comparison. Once the comparison stopped being interesting, so did the friendship. But something else happened too. A few people got curious. Quietly, privately, they'd ask how he did it. Not performing curiosity for an audience, just two people talking honestly about money for the first time in years. And there's an uncomfortable truth underneath all of this. Society still tends to reward the appearance of wealth faster than it rewards the substance of it. The leased car gets noticed at the stoplight. The quietly growing brokerage account gets noticed by no one until, one day, it's the only thing still standing. Michael's confidence didn't come from being seen. It came from no longer needing to be. Real wealth is not owning everything you want. It's no longer needing everything you thought you needed. Somewhere out there, right now, someone is leasing a car to impress people who are busy being impressed by someone else. And somewhere else, someone just canceled a subscription, sold something they didn't need, and felt for the first time in a long time like they could actually breathe. The question was never whether you could afford the life you're showing people. The question is whether you'd still want it if no one was watching at all.